Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. As a homeschooler, one thing that I hear an awful lot, either while I'm out and about or as a comment on my blog or on someone else's blog, is that someone will invariably say something to the effect of, I wish I could homeschool, but I could never homeschool because... And then they will usually give some sort of reason. There's actually a few different reasons that are repeated an awful lot. And I'm going to go over some of those today because I'm going to tell you that a lot of times you think that you can't homeschool because of these reasons, but you really can. So I'm going to address some of those today. The first one that I hear the most is someone will say, I could never homeschool because I don't have the patience. Guess what? I don't have a lot of patience either, okay? And I'm sure that my kids will tell you that. You don't have to be a superwoman to homeschool because there is no such thing. We all have our little quirks and we all have our little things that we need to work on. So yeah, I'm going to tell you that I can get pretty impatient, but I will tell you that my patience has grown so much since I started homeschooling 8 years ago. Because you know how when you use your muscles more often, they get stronger? It's the same way with patience. The more that you need to use your patience, the stronger it gets and the more you can endure. So when your kids are at school all day, you're just not used to being with them. You know, they come home, do something wrong, and you snap right away because you're just not used to being with them. You haven't been able to flex that patience muscle. So when you're homeschooling, your kids are with you all the time. And I'm not going to say that, oh, I'm always so calm and collected with my kids, because I'd be lying to you if I said that. But I am going to tell you that you do not have to have the patience of a saint in order to homeschool. I don't know of anybody who actually does. And it's one thing that I am trying to work on, and it's one thing that we all need to work on. But your patience will never grow with your kids if you're not with them enough to practice, right? So another reason that I hear a lot of people say is because they work full time. And I totally understand that. I know that there are a lot of people who have to have two incomes. I will say that my husband and I, he works, I stay home and take care of the kids, and we do have 10 kids in the house. So what I am going to tell you first of all is that you really can live on just one income. You know, if I can do it with 10 kids, I know that there are ways to stretch that dollar. And that will actually, I'll address that in another video. But let's just say perhaps that you absolutely have to work full time while your husband works full time. There are a lot of families who do that. Depending on the age of your child, if your child is old enough, they could, just stay home by themselves, and they could either do their work while you're gone or they could wait until you get home. There are other families where maybe the father will work one shift and the mother will work another shift, and they kind of work their homeschool schedule around that. There are other people who sometimes have the option to bring their work home with them. So they're actually able to work from home and be a little bit more flexible in their hours with their homeschooling. But the main thing with homeschooling is that you can homeschool any time of the day that you want to. You can homeschool any day of the week that you need to. You know, if Monday through Friday wouldn't be great, you could homeschool just a couple days during the week and then maybe even do it on Saturdays or possibly even Sundays if you had to. That's entirely up to you, and there are so many two-income families that also do homeschool. And actually, in the description box, I'm going to leave a link for my friend Jen's group. She actually has a group for working homeschool moms. So I'm sure that you could get a lot of great information there. So it is possible, I'm telling you now. And I will add that I have actually even spoken already to single working moms who homeschool. So I'm telling you that where there's a will, there's a way. Okay? Another one that I hear a lot is they will say, I'm not qualified. I'm not a teacher. Or they might say something like, I would never be able to teach my kids algebra. Well, as for not being qualified or not being a teacher, let me just say that you don't need to be a teacher to homeschool. They are two completely different atmospheres. I think there's a common misconception that only certified teachers are able to teach kids. But if you look back throughout history, a compulsory schooling has only been a small portion of our lives. Before that, it was normal for parents to teach their children. It was a way of life, and it wasn't even something that they thought of. They didn't think, oh, well, I'm homeschooling my kids. It wasn't even like that because everybody was doing it, and that's how everybody grew up. And I know that there are people nowadays who will say, oh, but that's why, there were so many illiterate people back then. But I'm going to tell you that I do have, I think it was Ted Kennedy at one point, he was talking about Massachusetts. Massachusetts was the first state that actually instituted compulsory schooling. And he actually went on record as saying that the literacy level in the state of Massachusetts before they instituted compulsory schooling was at like 98%. And once they started compulsory schooling in Massachusetts, it has never been past that point. It has always been lower. So their literacy rate was higher before they started making kids go to school. So just think about that for a minute. So when people go to college for an education degree, they're not always taught just what to teach. They're taught, classroom management and how to fill out the report cards and various paperwork that they have to do and all the red tape. And, that's what a lot of teaching is in school nowadays. It's not even so much teaching. It's all that red tape. And I've had so many teachers come up to me and tell me that they've quit teaching because it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. So not being a teacher is definitely not something that's going to hold you back in your homeschooling. Actually, I think a lot of times people who are teachers and decide to homeschool their kids, they actually end up finding that their notions of what education is supposed to look like is a little bit harder to let go of once they start homeschooling because they were trained to teach in a public school setting. So there are certain ways that they do things. So sometimes it's a little bit harder for them to embrace the flexibility that comes with homeschooling. So I could even say that you not being a teacher is an advantage when you homeschool your kids. Also, as with teaching, the higher maths or maybe physics, chemistry, I hear you. I don't like geometry. I don't really like chemistry. I don't like physics. But you can't just write off homeschooling because either you don't know how to do them or you don't want to do them or any sort of reason like that, because there are so many different choices that we have, so many different ways that our kids can still learn those subjects even if we're not great at them. Just some examples of that are, as the parent, you could even sit down with your kids and learn it with them. And a lot of times now, when I was in school, I liked algebra. And I still like algebra, but once we get into the graphing of linear equations and stuff, I was pretty fuzzy on that. So I actually sat down with my son and I learned it all over again right along with him. As for my daughter, she decided to take a refresher geometry course this year. And geometry is one of those things where I like shapes and figuring out the area and perimeter, all of that, fourth grade geometry is great. But when it comes to doing proofs and the isosceles triangle theorem and all these postulates, it just goes over my head and I have no idea how to do it. Does that mean that I can't homeschool? No. We actually found a great geometry program. It's an online geometry course called Mr. D Math. I'll leave a link for that at the bottom. And it's not just geometry. It's all of the upper level math courses. And it's great. There are video tutorials and there are weekly online classes that are live. So he actually interacts with the students. So that's another option. You could always hire a tutor. If you can't afford that, I know that at least at our library, they do offer free tutoring services at certain times. So you could definitely look into that. There are so many great free websites online. Khan Academy is one that has excellent math tutorial videos. So I'm not going to go through everything that you could do, but my point is as with working in homeschooling, where there's a will, there's a way, When you want to do something badly enough, you find a way to do it and you make it work. And there are so many people who do that. So I just want to encourage you in that. Another one that people say is, they say it to me all the time because of how many kids that I have. They say to me, oh, you homeschool and you have all of those kids. You must be so organized. I just want to laugh in their faces when they say that to me, because I try to be organized. Yeah, my daughter's behind the camera laughing right now because she knows that it's not true. And actually, I'm going to tell you the reason that I'm facing this way today and not that way is because my homeschool table is too disorganized right now, so I didn't want it on camera. So that's one thing with me. People think that because they don't have great organizational skills that they can't homeschool. And, okay. When I did not have a bunch of kids, I did actually have really good organizational skills. I'm very type A, so you'll find lots of stuff like this around my house. And it's a nice goal, and it helps me to believe that I'm getting things organized. But ask me how often we actually follow this. It doesn't happen as much as I'd like. So no, you don't have to be completely organized to homeschool. Yes, of course, you can't have everything in disarray. But you also don't have to. I know that there are so many videos of homeschool classrooms where they're just beautiful and organized, and they have all these filing systems, and that is awesome. It's not me though, and I'm not going to stress myself out over something that I honestly have worked on. And really, I'm not ever going to reach that level because I'm at the point in my life where I've got so many kids that I have to take care of, and it's more important that I am meeting their needs than constantly stressing over what our classroom looks like, which we don't even have a classroom. We do it in the dining room. But my point is that there are more important things for us to worry about right now. So, and that's okay. So what we do is, usually, every 6 weeks we take a 1 week break, and during that 1 week break we have a deep clean day. That is when I will come into the dining room and I will organize all of our homeschooling papers then. So it's not like they never get done. It's just that you are not going to find a Duggar style house here. I don't have everything perfectly labeled and in perfect order. Our house is lived in, and I have to be realistic about it. And you do too. So don't put yourself down because you think that you'd never be organized enough to homeschool, because a lot of us really aren't. We do what we have to do. We keep things in places where we know where they are because, of course, we need to do that. But you also don't need to be some sort of, Martha Stewart organization expert or something to that order in order to homeschool, because there are so many of us that are not like that. So now a big one that actually really, it hurts my heart to hear this one, because at one point I felt this way. They always said I could never homeschool because I would never be able to handle being with my kids all day. And yeah, I was one of those people too. And now that I actually have been homeschooling all this time, it really cuts to the core to hear people say that, because I think that I was talking earlier about before compulsory schooling and how, parents and families educated their kids and they all did things together. I really think that school has taken away a lot of the family centrality that is crucial in developing kids. It's like our kids today, they're in school 6-7 hours a day, and then they're in after school programs, whether it's for test prep or an art club or sports, something to that effect. They get home 5, sometimes maybe 6 o'clock, eat dinner, and a lot of times they're either out the door to another extracurricular, or they're spending, 2-3 hours on homework then. And it's like, when are parents supposed to be able to get used to being around their kids, I could be haughty about it and say, oh, how could people say that they can't be around their kids? But no, I totally get it, because how are you going to be able to handle being around somebody that you're never with? This just goes right up there with patience. If you want to be able to handle being with your kids, you have to spend that time with them. The more time you spend with your kids, the better you're able to handle it, because you get used to it. You get used to having the extra noise and the extra mess. And yeah, those things happen, and it's a fact of life. But you're never going to be able to be with your kids if you don't take that time and make sure that you spend, I wrote a post a while back about quality over quantity is a lie when it comes to parenting. And, a lot of times I was alluding to that. People today, society, they try to make us feel better about our lives where we're rushing around all the time by saying to us, oh, well, it's not the quality, or sorry, it's not the quantity that matters. It's the quality of time that you spend with your kids. So just spend quality time with them, and how much time you spend with them doesn't matter. It does matter, okay? And I gave the example that when I was growing up, my mom, she worked second shift full time, so I was with my dad a lot at night, and we never really did all these awesome things together. He worked all day. He was tired. He would come home, and most of the time we would just sit there watching TV together all night. But he was with me every day, and I would not trade that time for anything. I don't care that he wasn't out there taking me hiking and going to all these fabulous places. And, it's nice when parents do that with their kids, but when they're doing that to make up for time lost with them, that's when it becomes a little bit of a problem. Because when I think back to my childhood, even when we did do fun stuff, it's not that fun stuff that I'm thinking about. It's that time that I spent every day. I can just picture because my dad is no longer with us. And so when I think about him, I'm not thinking about, all the times that we went to the beach, and things like that. And we did do stuff like that at times. What I think about is sitting in the living room with him, watching movies, just the goofy stuff. He used to take off his dirty socks and throw them at us. Just goofy stuff like that is what I remember. So I think that this is something that we as a society really need to work on. We need to stop treating our kids as if they're an inconvenience. Because I'm sure that when we all found out that we were having our kids, we never thought that someday we'd consider them an inconvenience. But that's really what ends up happening. And again, it's just because that's the way we're brought up. It's like your kids, they turn 5, you send them to school, they're out of your hair, they're the teacher's problem. But no, they're not the teacher's problem, they're our problem. They're our kids. So yeah, as you can tell, I really went off on a tangent with this one because this is one that really bothers me. So again, if you think that you can't handle being with your kids all day, my advice to you is to spend more time with them, because it seems, counterintuitive, but that's really what you need to do. You need to spend more time with them in order to be able to handle being with them a lot. So just think about those things. And this isn't the last one, this is the second last one. A lot of people think they could never homeschool because they don't have time. And this goes back to, we look at school, it takes 6-7 hours a day, and a lot of people think, oh, well, I could never homeschool because I don't have 6 or 7 hours a day to be spending, with my kids, teaching them all day. There are other things that we have to do. I have cooking and cleaning, and I volunteer here. And you know what? Homeschooling does not have to take 6 to 7 hours a day at all. I homeschool my seven youngest. I homeschool actually very hands-on yet. Now, I'm not going to mention my high school kids yet because they're pretty independent, but my 7 youngest I'm very hands-on with. And those 7 kids, I am usually done homeschooling them between, I'd say, about 2.5 to 3 hours, 4 tops, 7 kids. Okay, so no, you don't need to homeschool for 6 or 7 hours a day. So if you think that you won't have time to homeschool, maybe it's just because your perception of what homeschooling is like really isn't the reality of what it can be. And the beautiful thing about homeschooling is that there are so many different approaches to homeschooling that, for example, unschooling, that's like you're not even doing school with them at all. They're just living beside you, learning from life. You're doing activities together. So it really is no extra time out of your day in order to do things like that. So if you really want to homeschool but think that you don't have the time, I really urge you to research it. Research the different methods and really talk to some homeschoolers, because I'm telling you, it is not as time consuming as people would have you believe. Really. And the last one that I'm going to talk to you about today is a lot of people think that they could never homeschool because they can't afford it. And Yeah, I totally get you there. But homeschooling does not have to be expensive at all. Okay. I know that the most popular homeschool curriculums, the textbook ones, that the school in a box curriculums, they're expensive. You know, they several $100s for some of them. And if you've got more than one child, yeah, that's a pretty penny to be spending on homeschooling. But you don't have to use those to homeschool. You can homeschool using almost entirely just the library, that's like my main homeschool resources. I can't even talk. One of my main homeschool resources is the library. Like my husband will often say to me, I'll say to him, "Oh, well, I have to go to the library today." Again, yes, because that's how we homeschool. That's where we're getting the information for our kids, is from the library. And really, without the library, we would be spending a lot of money on it. But even at that point, I will say that there is so much free homeschooling curriculum online. All you have to do is look it up. You know, there's easy peasy all-in-one homeschool. You know, there are free unit studies all over the place. I even have some free unit studies on my blog. So no, you do not have to be rich in order to homeschool at all. You know, you can do it pretty much for free. I've written on that several times about how to homeschool for almost for free. And the almost can even just come in that the only thing that you're really having to spend money on sometimes is the paper and pencils and crayons and that sort of thing. Because really, you can get everything for free. All you have to do is be resourceful, know where to look, and know who to ask. So that's my encouragement for you today. In the description box below, I am going to link to several of the things that I talked about today. One of them is actually going to be a post where I wrote down 15 reasons why you think you could never homeschool, but why I think you can. And I didn't bring up all 15 reasons today, so there are actually more there. But I'm going to link that. I'm going to link to a bunch of other things. And I hope that you have a great day, and I hope that you find this to be helpful. I'll talk to you later.